This coming Sunday marks Hollywood's biggest night, AKA the Oscars.
It's pretty clear to everyone that the Oscars are having an identity crisis.
No host, a popular film category that came and went, getting rid of some of the categories from the live broadcasts, cutting musical numbers. The Oscars seem deeply ashamed to be the Oscars. I'm Anthony Oliveira, writer and film programmer.
I'm Ashani Nath, senior editor at Flair.com.
I'm Stephen Marsh, random Toronto writer. The problem is that the Academy can't quite decide what it wants to celebrate about itself. Either its vanity or its artistic abilities or, its political virtues.
Look, the Academy Awards are a staple on my calendar. And while it's true that the show is in dire need of a makeover, this is not the way.
This year, the Oscars have to answer a fundamental question. Can this Hollywood institution, dominated by big studios, still be relevant in the age of Twitter and Netflix?
Okay, welcome one and all. Gather round because it is Christmas time for movie buffs. Except this year we're questioning what Santa is doing with his life and whether the presents are even any good. So they're on Sunday. Our own resident film critic, Eli Glasner, is in Los Angeles right now. He sent us this. Have a look.
Look, I get it. I know the show is long, and do we really need a category for best sound editing and mixing? But we need the Oscars now more than ever to stop the endless tide of superheroes, Star Wars, and Disney remakes. La La Land is contracting. Big studios are becoming mega studios. Disney gobbled up Fox, and now in the battle for box office domination, it's all about the global marketplace. And you know what plays nicely from Shanghai to St. John's? Action, explosion, fairy tales. Meanwhile, all the great directors of this industry are lining up in the lobby to work with Netflix, but Oscars offers an alternative. Not the biggest film, but the best. Hollywood is where courage comes to die. But the idea of an Oscar statuette sitting on a producer's desk somewhere might convince them to open the purse strings, to spend some money. The Oscars is a safety cushion. And without it, would we have movies like Moonlight and Amadeus? So I'll take the show, flaws and all.
Okay, so I sometimes like to just watch your face to try to gauge what your point of view is going to be.
Oscar's the hope of art, right? This is not a violent.
Okay, well, but do we at least agree that the Oscars could serve this higher purpose?
Well, I think they want to serve a higher purpose. In fact, I think the question the Oscars answers every year is, what does Hollywood think its higher purpose is? But the answer to that is almost never better art.
But that's not always the case, though, right? I mean, you think back to 2017, a movie like Moonlight, right? Yeah. It has the distinction of being one of the smallest, lowest-grossing films to win Best Picture of all time. I mean, are the Oscars able to walk that line of celebrating craftsmanship, but then also just kind of giving fans what they want to see? Yeah,
I think that, if you look at the history of the Oscars, Louis B. Mayer, literally created them as a way to make directors fight for trinkets. It is a system designed to service the big studio system that is designed to make studios happy, and that's what they're trying to do this year, right? Not just for the Oscars, but also ABC is pulling a lot of the levers. All these weird decisions that are happening are mostly to serve a Nielsen model of television. Right. It's not just a film model that's a problem here, it's also the way we consume this stuff.
But I guess, money is part of the reason, right? You have advertisers and the ratings are a very real concern. And to address what you just said, there are all kinds of changes.
Yes,
right?
Changes and then not changes.
And then not changes, they pull them back. And so many examples of that. Did any of those changes make sense to you in a way, or what were your thoughts on those?
Honestly, no. None of the changes really made sense, and I think that's why they ultimately ended up backtracking, because things like the cuts to the number of musical acts, the cuts to the categories that are going to be aired, none of those things were in line with what we know as the Oscars and what they celebrate. So,
the million-dollar question, I suppose, is how do you solve that identity crisis? How do you be all things to all people?
Well, I'm not that smart. I don't think anyone here is.
You
are. Good to know. Good to know.
No, it's why do the Oscars keep trying to appeal to an audience that it doesn't have, that it will never have? It's so apologetic about its own content, cutting musical numbers, cutting cinematography, and editing. These are the categories that it is designed to celebrate, and instead it's trying to constantly apologize for itself. The Super Bowl does not apologize for being the Super Bowl. For some reason, in the arts always feel like they have to wring their hands about like, well, we're not getting enough straight white men watching. It's like, let them go, do what the Tonys does, and just play to your fans.
What the Oscars is a trinkets affair. It is the New Orleans beads for celebrities. Right? And essentially, the reason they're obsessed with this, the reason they're making all these changes is because the numbers are in radical decline.
Right.
And the numbers are all they care about.
Okay, so let's talk about that backdrop, right? Of declining ratings and an academy that doesn't quite seem to know what to do about them. So let's look at the nominees, to steal a phrase.
Right.
Best Picture, right? All sorts of intriguing options there. Which one do you think will win?
You know what? I'm the world's worst judge of this. Like, you can bet against me every time, but I do think Roma's going to win. Like, I do think Roma's going to win, and
it would be a first, right? For
it would be a first,
language?
and also it's a Netflix show, which is revealing as well, right? But it's so obviously the best film of the year to me. It really is.
But then that would say a lot about where the Oscars' priorities are.
Well,
right?
I'm also wrong all the time. So.
But I mean, so who do you think will win?
I do think that Roma will take it, but I wish that Beale Street had been considered, because I think it's a beautiful movie, and it's something we don't see often enough.
Okay.
And that's a true art movie, Beale Street. Like, if it were talking about art, there'd be no question that Beale Street would be on that list, right?
But the reason I love Black Panther for this is it's also playing to that desire to service more popular film that the Academy is not being so secretive about, right? Like, they wanted to have a popular film category, and then they realized the optics of that weren't great, and they backed it off. But Black Panther can kind of split the difference for that and say that it is possible to make an award-winning superhero movie within the confines of that genre, which certainly, if you're ever going to pick one to win, it should be Black Panther.
Yeah.
Okay, so I do want to make a hard turn here to the case of American actor Jussie Smollett. He's accused of planning and staging an attack on himself. According to prosecutors, he told his attackers to yell specific slurs, shouting, "This is MAGA country." By all accounts, appearing to be a violently homophobic and racist attack until information started to trickle out that maybe it wasn't. The producers of the TV show he's in, Empire, announced today that they're cutting his character, but Smollett's own legal team says it believes the presumption of innocence was trampled upon, and Smollett himself insists he is innocent. Anthony, the matter is before a court, so this is not the place to resolve the facts of the case, but the consequences are very real. How do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to say is that I am not a black man, and that the optics, for example, of a lynching, which this case sort of performed, whether as an attack or whether as a staged event, is something that I can't speak to at all, nor should I. But I am a gay man, and I am a gay man living in Toronto, so I do know what it's like to have a police force that seems to be acting against your best interests. And I think that the thing to keep in mind as this case is sort of developing is this case is being weaponized as a way to, I think, inoculate against certain accusations in future. I think that there are people in the wake of things like the Me Too movement where it will be very handy to have a case where you can say, maybe this is like Jussie Smollett. It is something that I think is going to be thrown in the face of a lot of survivors going forward, and I think that, to me, is where I want to put all the traffic cones in the discussion around this case as it develops.
No matter the outcome of the court case, is there a part of this that will inevitably have a chilling effect on minority communities?
That's my concern, is that there's a lot of intersecting, marginalized groups that this impinges upon, and a lot of them are going to be dealing with fallout from the possibility of accusations that, well, you're lying, you're manufacturing these events, you're exaggerating about how bad things have become, which is why we're hearing about it so much, right? That's why these people want us to be talking about these things as something that, oh, well, it's stageable, right? Like, that's my biggest concern about this case.
Ishani, that everyone was so quick to rush to a judgment on this too, is the other side of this, right? I mean, everyone had a point of view on it before they really knew much of anything. I mean, what does that say? I
think it's telling of the times that we're in right now. And, for me, when I heard about it, it seemed awful, but also not that far-fetched. Like, there weren't those red flags at the beginning because, in Canada, hate crimes were up 47% in 2017. Like, there are serious tensions right now. So for this to happen with some of the markers and things that were said, it didn't seem outrageous that this would be something that would take place.
It didn't entirely surprise you that something of this magnitude would happen, but that people would react.
Yeah, and then we're all primed to weigh in because we want to stand for survivors, and that's the discussion that's happening. So I do worry, exactly to your point, I worry about what this will mean and how this will be used to undercut actual survivors.
And Stephen, you're
Well, I mean, you know, I think there was remember the Rolling Stone rape trial that happened where it turned out nothing was happening, and then before then there was the Duke trial, but Me Too happened right after that, right? I mean, I'm not sure how much effect it has because we're all so siloed in our communities anyway that, you know, nobody waits for the facts. So the facts on both sides of this debate really don't matter much. So, you know, no one on the left is going to be even moderately, you know, slowed by this story, and no one on the right. It's all just part of a pattern that they've already bought into long ago. Yeah. So, you know, the sides are already divided. This isn't going to have any impact one way or the other.
So let me jump in just to sort of try to put a button on this. I mean, how in the end does one appeal to rationality? Because
what a question.
I mean,
I would love to know.
You do have two sides, right? One side that says, listen, real attacks do happen. Let's try to remember that.
Yes.
But then you have another side.
Which is absolutely correct. I mean, and is the overwhelmingly most important fact, right?
But then you have another side that says, where's our apology for branding all Trump supporters as racists? So, Ishani, where do we go from here?
I think we need to remember that this was a case that speaks to potentially someone who made a false accusation, potentially. But statistically, that is an extremely small percentage of people. So just because this one is louder does not mean that that changes the numbers. And we need to remember that going forward.
That's a good place to end. All of you, thank you very much.
Thank you.